Hi there, this is John Wilkinson from History Made Easier, and this is the first of two presentations that will explore 10 key factors to the League of Nations and its work. It's part of my series aimed to help you focus for your revision. It will not give you the kind of detail you will need, but it will direct your thinking and might well help you with some new things to think about and help lift your work to the dizzy heights of an A star. And to get to that level, as well as knowing your history, you need to demonstrate that you have thought about it. So let's take a look at these 10 key factors. First up, the League was tied to the war and to the Paris peace treaties. This meant there were emotional ties, and they weren't peaceful emotions, more like raging hatred, and from both winners and losers. Don't forget Italy and its mutilated victory. The League was written into each of the peace treaties, and so it meant that it was well and truly bound to ensure the terms of the treaties were upheld. And this, first and foremost, meant upholding Europe's new borders. Look at the early disputes the League was called on to resolve. Except for the Ireland Islands, they were all border disputes directly linked to the peace treaties. It also meant upholding the reparations arrangements, hence the occupation of the Ruhr, and the military restrictions, hence the much-delayed disarmaments conference. Indeed, in 1923, with the occupation of the Ruhr, the French argued that if Germany was allowed to get away without paying its reparations, it would create a precedent that would lead to Germany ignoring the military restrictions placed on it, as well as manoeuvring to get territory back. But it also meant that membership of the League had already been decided, meaning the defeated nations and Russia would only be allowed to join later, when they had shown that they could be trusted. How do you think that made them feel? We also have some key presumptions to consider. That the League was founded on the presumption that America would be a member and take the leading role, and that it didn't, was so important. Take, for example, the Dawes and Young plans. Britain and France were simply not in a position to lead the League with any resolve. The League was also founded on the presumption that democracy would prevail, and this is also very important. The authoritarian regimes of Germany, Japan, Russia and Italy were decidedly not democratic, and so didn't have to worry about voters. And it was they who, unhappy with the peace treaties and the way that they were written, note how things link, it was they who brought about a Second World War. And so this leads us to membership and non-membership. And yes, America's non-membership was incredibly important. And that Germany and Russia only joined later is very important too. But I think the key thing to focus on is the general lack of commitment within the League. France only saw the League as a means to protect itself against Germany, and even then didn't see how the League could best do that. For example, by standing firm in the Manchurian and Abyssinian crises. Whilst Britain had quickly come to see the Treaty of Versailles, something the League was charged with upholding, as a mistake. That they saw the post-war order, Britain and France that is, that they saw the post-war order very differently, particularly with regard to Germany, left the League floundering. Let's take 3 examples. As we've noted, France occupied the Ruhr in 1923, whereas Britain would go on to appease Hitler. And the 2 countries had very different approaches to the disarmament conference. But what's more, the key aggressors, Japan, Italy, Germany and Russia, all left the League as permanent members of the Council when it stood up to them or didn't give them exactly what they wanted. Now, I'm going to cover these next 3 slides quite quickly. Slides focusing on aims, means and weaknesses. That's not to suggest they are unimportant. You might well have questions aimed at them, but I only want to give you key pointers to think about. Again, it's not the purpose of this presentation to provide detail. My website and my ebooks provide that kind of detail. So though it's important to know the League's different aims, if you look at the slide, you can see that they all link back to keeping the peace. And ultimately, that's what the League's successes or lack of is measured by. Show that in your work if a question gives you the chance. As to the key means by which the League would do its work, you have to know the key problems related to its structure and be aware of how the structure, with unanimous decisions required in the Assembly and vetoes for permanent members of the Council, made collective security an unlikely prospect. Be clear about what examples you would use to show these weaknesses. And as for weaknesses, we've mentioned some of the structural problems already, and it was Article 10 that dealt with collective security that kept America out. But the Conference of the Ambassadors, set up as a temporary measure to give the League time to establish its authority, but kept going by Britain and France until 1931, is too often forgotten about. It was a messy alternative to the League. It was involved in Vilna, Memel and Corfu, whilst the problem of sovereignty, that the sovereignty of individual nations still reigned supreme in international law, which made it difficult for other nations to get involved, and so made the League's work really difficult, at times impossible. So there you have my first presentation aimed to help you revise the League of Nations. I hope it's given you useful things to think about. But don't forget to check out my website, History Made Easier. It's there to help you too. But for now, as always, I will thank you for listening. Cheers.